My own mother stood up at my father's birthday dinner and told the entire table, including him, that I was too poor to afford the bill. The humiliation was absolute. But what she didn't know was that just moments later, the entire restaurant staff would walk over, look directly at me, and greet me by a title I never knew I had, one that would shatter her perfect lie and change my family forever. My life, for the longest time, felt like a perfectly curated Instagram post. You know the kind. The lighting is just soft enough, the colors are muted but warm, and everyone in the frame is smiling in a way that suggests a private, wonderful joke. That was us. Or rather, that was the version of us I believed in. My name is Leo, short for Leandro, a name my father gave me because he said it sounded like a whisper of the ocean. He was always a little poetic like that. I was 28, living in a sun-drenched apartment in Santa Monica that I could barely afford on a junior architect's salary. But it was my little slice of heaven, a place with whitewashed floors and a balcony just big enough for 2 chairs, where I'd sit with my girlfriend, Chloe, and watch the sun dip into the Pacific. We'd been together since our senior year at UCLA, a fact that felt both monumental and comfortably mundane. She knew the shape of my silences, the way I scrunched my nose when I was concentrating on a design, the childhood story about me getting my head stuck in a banister. We were building a life, plank by careful plank, and then there was my family. The heart of it all was my dad, Gabriel, a big bear of a man with laugh lines permanently etched around his eyes, and a toolbox that could fix just about anything, including a broken spirit. He'd immigrated from Portugal, with nothing but a suitcase and a trade as a carpenter, and over 40 years, he'd built a quiet, respectable life for us. He was the kind of man who believed a handshake was a contract, and that the secret to happiness was a well-seasoned piece of grilled fish and a cold beer. My mum Evelyn was more complicated. She was the curator of our family's image, elegant, always perfectly put together, with a sharpness to her that could slice through pretense. She loved us, I never doubted that, but her love often came wrapped in expectation. She was the one who pushed me towards architecture, who subtly suggested my dad's small contracting business, while honest, wasn't quite as prestigious as it could be. The annual ritual was my dad's birthday dinner, every year without fail, on October 12th. It was sacrosanct. My mum would spend weeks casually suggesting restaurants, dropping names of the newest, trendiest spots in town, but my dad always wanted the same place, O Velho Mar, the old. It was this unassuming Portuguese taverna tucked into a strip mall in Culver City, a place with red checkered tablecloths, the smell of garlic and paprika hanging thick in the air, and old fishermen's nets draped from the ceiling. The food was his childhood on a plate: grilled sardines, cataplana seafood stew, bacalhau à brás. It was his one night to be utterly, unapologetically himself, to talk to the elderly owner, Senor Silva, in the rapid-fire Portuguese I could barely follow. This year, his 65th, felt bigger, a milestone. My mum had been more insistent than ever about trying some sleek new place downtown. Gabriel, it's your 65th. We should be seen. O Velho Mar is so quaint. I could see the faint disappointment in my dad's eyes, a slight droop of his shoulders, but he just patted her hand. The heart wants what it wants, Evie, he'd said, and that was that. A week before the dinner, my mum called me. Leo, darling, about the dinner. Your father is being stubborn, of course. O Velho Mar again, she sighed, a sound that conveyed immense, weary suffering. Listen, things are a little tight right now. Your father's business, well, let's just say it's a slow season. I'm going to need you to cover the bill this year. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, a decree. I felt a tiny prickle of unease. My dad's business had its ups and downs, but he was always fiercely proud, never letting it impact our traditions. Still, I shoved the feeling down. Of course I'd pay. I'd max out a credit card for that man. Absolutely, Mum. Don't even worry about it. Thank you, sweetheart. You're such a good son. Oh, and wear that blue shirt I bought you. You look so handsome in it. The call ended, and I remember staring at my phone, that prickle of unease returning. There was something in her tone, a rehearsed quality, but I was too busy, too wrapped up in a deadline for a new eco-friendly office complex, to give it much thought. It was just money, and it was for Dad. The night of October 12th was unseasonably warm, a last gasp of summer clinging to the LA air. I picked up Chloe, who looked stunning in a simple black dress, her auburn hair falling around her shoulders. "You okay?" she asked, squeezing my hand. "You seem tense." "Just a long week," I said, forcing a smile. "And you know my mom, she's probably already rearranged the table settings in her head twice." We arrived at Ovelumar and the familiar wave of garlic and grilled fish washed over me. It was packed, a loud, happy cacophony of families and friends, but I noticed something immediately. The place looked different. It was cleaner, brighter. The old fishing nets were still there, but they looked less dusty. The tables were the same, but the chairs were new, sturdier. There were fresh coats of paint on the walls, a deep, oceanic blue instead of the faded yellow. It felt the same, but better, like it had gotten a good night's sleep. We found my parents at our usual corner table. My dad was beaming, his face flushed with happiness. He was already deep in conversation with a waiter, pointing at something on the menu. My mum, in a sleek, cream-colored blouse, looked slightly out of place, like a diamond accidentally set in rustic iron. She gave me a tight smile and air-kissed my cheek. "You're late, Leo." "5 minutes, Mum. Traffic on the The meal was, as always, incredible. We ate, we laughed. My dad told his same old stories, and we listened as if it were the first time. He was in his element, and seeing him so happy made any lingering unease I had vanish. The wine flowed, plates were cleared, and the moment I'd been preparing for arrived. I caught the eye of our server, a young man I didn't recognize, and gave him a small discreet nod, tapping my credit card on the table to signal that I'd be taking the check. My mum saw it. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Leo, no," she said, her voice a low, urgent whisper across the table. "It's fine, Mum. We talked about this." I kept my voice light, cheerful. "No, really, I can't let you do that." Her tone was sharper now, cutting through the jovial noise of the restaurant. My dad and Chloe paused their conversation, sensing the shift. "Evelyn, what's going on?" my dad asked, his brow furrowed. My mum turned to him, placing a hand over his. "Gabriel, honey, Leo's been so stressed with work and his finances. Well, an architect's starting salary isn't what it used to be. That apartment he's in is a stretch. I just don't think he can afford a dinner like this. It's not fair to put that pressure on him." The world didn't slow down, it stopped, just froze solid. I could feel the blood draining from my face, a cold numbness spreading from my chest out to my fingertips. I couldn't afford it. She had asked me to pay. She had framed it as a family necessity, a temporary tightness, and now she was painting me as some irresponsible, struggling child who couldn't handle a birthday dinner. In front of my father on his birthday, in front of Chloe. I looked at my dad. The confusion in his eyes was being rapidly replaced by something else. A deep, profound hurt that I had somehow caused. He thought I was embarrassed by him, by his favorite place, that I didn't want to pay for his meal. He looked from my mom's pitying expression to my stunned, silent face, and he believed her narrative. His shoulders slumped, the light in his eyes, the joy that had been there all night, guttered out. "Leo, son, you should have said something," he said softly, the words landing like physical blows. "We would have understood." That's when the real betrayal detonated inside me. It wasn't just the love, it was the calculated cruelty of it. She had used me as a tool to shame my father, to make a point about his quaint choices and his unimpressive life. She had engineered this entire scenario to prove that his world, the one he loved, was beneath, and she had made me her unwitting accomplice. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. What could I say? "Actually, Dad, Mom's a liar." It would have sounded like a pathetic, defensive counterattack. The proof was her performance. Her concerned, maternal act was flawless. I just sat there, utterly paralyzed by the shock and the sheer audacious wickedness of it. The ride home was a silent, suffocating tomb. Chloe held my hand, her grip tight, but she knew better than to speak. The words were churning inside me, a toxic storm of anger, humiliation, and a grief so sharp it felt like a physical wound. I dropped her off at her place, and she just hugged me, hard. "Call me if you need to talk, anytime." I just nodded, numb. I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly through the neon-lit streets for hours, my mind replaying the scene on a vicious loop. My father's defeated face, my mother's triumphant, pitying eyes, the clatter of the restaurant fading into a dull roar in my ears. I felt like a fool. All those little comments over the years, the subtle digs at my dad's simplicity, her constant pushing for more. I'd always brushed them off as just mom being mom. I'd made excuses for her, I'd been her audience, and I hadn't even known it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my balcony, watching the sky lighten from black to bruised purple to a soft hopeful pink that felt like a personal insult. How could the sun rise on a day like this? The world felt fundamentally broken. The trust I had in my family, in the very story of my life, had been revealed as a flimsy set piece. The next week was a blur of grey. I went to work. I sat at my drafting table, but my designs were lifeless. My concentration shattered. I was a ghost going through the motion. My dad called me once. His voice was quiet, hesitant. "Leo, about the other night, your mother, she's just worried about you. We both are. We don't want you to struggle." He was trying to make me feel better, to smooth it over. He was protecting her. The injustice of it was a knife to the gut. "I'm fine, Dad," I lied, my voice hollow. "Don't worry about me." My mom sent cheerful texts. "Hope you're having a good week, darling. Did you wear the blue shirt?" I started ignoring her call. Every message felt like another layer of manipulation. Chloe was my anchor. I finally broke down and told her everything. The phone call, the specific request for money, the entire sordid setup. She listened, her face a mask of growing horror. "Oh, Leo," she whispered when I finished. She didn't. She couldn't be that. She couldn't even find the word. She was. I said the truth of it finally, fully settling in my bones. She absolutely was. I became obsessed with understanding why. Why that restaurant? Why that night? Was it just snobbery? It felt deeper, more personal. I started digging online, looking for anything about Wholesome, property records, business licenses, anything. It was a shot in the dark, a desperate need to find some sense in the chaos. And then I found it. A small business filing from 8 months ago, a change of ownership. The previous owner, Manuel Silva, had retired. The taverna had been sold. My breath hitched as I scrolled down. The name of the new owner, the person who had signed the paperwork, was listed clearly. It was my father, Gabriel Costa. The screen blurred in front of me. My heart hammered against my ribs. My dad, he owned Wholesome. He had bought his sanctuary. He'd never said a word. He wasn't the type to brag. He'd probably done it to preserve the place, to keep Senor Silva's legacy alive, to have a piece of his home forever. It was the most beautiful secret gift he'd ever given himself. And my mother, she knew. She had to know. Her husband's financial transaction that large. She knew everything. Her performance wasn't just snobbery. It was a deliberate cruel act to humiliate him in his own restaurant, to make him feel small and foolish in the one place where he felt most like a king. The scale of her betrayal was breathtaking. I sat back in my chair, the truth washing over me in cold, clarifying waves. This wasn't just about a birthday dinner. This was a war over my father's soul, and I had been a pawn on her board. But not anymore. The anger that followed was cold and precise. It wasn't a raging fire. It was a scalpel. All my heartbreak and confusion hardened into a single focused point of intent. My father would know the truth. He would know what she had done, and he would know what he had. But I couldn't just tell him. He'd spent a lifetime believing my mother's curated reality. A direct accusation would make him defensive. He'd protect her, protect the image of his marriage. I had to show him. I had to orchestrate a revelation he couldn't explain away. The plan formed slowly, piece by piece. It was his restaurant. The staff would know him. They would know the owner. I had to get him back there, without my mother, and I had to let the truth reveal itself organically. I needed witnesses. I needed a moment so undeniable that it would shatter my mother's fiction forever. I waited a month, let the dust settle, let the awkwardness of the birthday dinner fade into what my mom probably assumed was a minor, forgotten family blip. I played my part. I answered her calls with curt politeness. I visited my dad in his workshop, talking about everything but that night. I could still see a shadow in his eyes when he looked at me, a faint hesitation, and it killed me. But I had to wait. Finally, I called him. "Dad, I need a favor." "Anything, son. You know that." His voice was warm, eager. He'd missed me. "I'm working on this design for a restaurant chain. A rustic Portuguese theme. I'm stuck. I need some inspiration. I was wondering if you'd come with me to Wholesome. Just you and me." You could, I don't know, tell me what makes it feel authentic, what makes it feel like home. There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear him wrestling with the memory of last time. I don't know, Lee. Your mother. It's for work, Dad, I said, layering my voice with professional need. It'll just be us, a working dinner, my treat. I held my breath. Another pause, then a soft chuckle. Your treat, huh? Okay, son, for your work, I'd be happy to. The following Tuesday, I picked him up. He was quiet on the drive over, looking out the window. I wondered if he was nervous. I know I was. My palms were sweating on the steering wheel. This was it. This was the gamble. We walked in and the same hostess from the birthday night greeted us. She smiled. "To tonight?" "Yes, please," I said, as she led us to a table. My dad stopped, pointing to a black and white photo on the wall. "Look, Leo, that's Senor Silva's father. He caught that tuna in night. A monster." He was already relaxing, slipping back into his skin. We sat. We ordered wine. We talked about the design, the arches, the lighting, the way the space felt. He was in his element, a professor of comfort and tradition. I was his rapt student. The meal was again perfect. The tension in my shoulders began to ease. Maybe this was enough, just this, him happy, talking about what he loved. But I had to see it through. As we finished our coffee, I raised my hand to signal for the check. My dad immediately started the old pat down for his wallet. "Now, Leo, I told you." It was then that the manager, a man in his 50s with a kind face and a sharp suit, approached our table. He'd been watching us all night with a curious, attentive expression. He walked right past me and stopped next to my dad's chair. He gave a slight respectful nod. "Mr. Costa," he said, his voice warm and familiar, "it's an honor to have you in tonight. Is everything to your satisfaction?" My dad looked up, slightly confused but polite. "Oh yes, wonderful. Everything is perfect, thank you." The manager's smile widened. "Excellent. We're so glad. We just got a new shipment of Vino Verde in that we selected based on your notes from last time. We'd be delighted to come a bottle for you and your guest to take home." The air left my lungs. My father stared at the man, his mouth slightly agape. The pieces were crashing together in his mind. The renovations, the new staff, who seemed to know him, the deference. I'm sorry," my dad stammered. "My notes." The manager's smile faltered. He looked from my dad's utterly bewildered face to mine. He saw my expression not of confusion, but of grim, satisfied clarity. A flicker of panic crossed his features. He had clearly made a terrible mistake. "Mr. Costa, the owner," he said, his voice now hesitant. "I assumed. Forgive me, I thought you knew." The world narrowed to my father's face. I watched the realization dawn. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow dawning sunrise of understanding. His eyes widened. He looked around the restaurant. His restaurant, with entirely new eyes. He saw the fresh paint he'd chosen, the new chairs he'd approved. He saw the staff, his staff, looking over with curious, concerned glances. He saw the entire beautiful secret truth, laid bare, and then his eyes found mine, and in them I saw the echo of the birthday dinner. I saw him understanding my mother's lie. I saw him understanding my silence. I saw him understanding the profound vicious nature of the betrayal, not just of him, but of me, of the carefully constructed world my mother had built for him cracked, then shattered, right there at the red checkered tablecloth. His face crumpled, not in sadness, but in a profound, overwhelming surge of emotion. A single tear traced a path through his laugh lines. He didn't say a word. He just reached across the table, his big calloused carpenter's hand covering mine, and held on as if I were the only solid thing left in a world that had just fallen away beneath his feet. We sat there for a long time, his hand on mine, in a bubble of silent understanding. The manager had retreated, flustered and apologetic, but the deed was done, the truth was out, hanging in the garlic-scented air between us. Finally, my dad took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked old in that moment, not the vibrant 65-year-old from his birthday, but aged by the weight of the revelation. "She knew," he whispered, the words not a question, but a statement of absolute heartbreaking fact. "She asked me to pay, Dad," I said, my voice "She told me you couldn't afford it. She set the whole thing up." He nodded slowly, staring at his empty coffee cup. "She never liked this place. She said it was beneath me, beneath us." He gave a dry, hollow laugh that had no humor in it. "I bought it because it was the only thing in this country that ever felt entirely mine. You know, not ours, mine. I wanted to keep it safe. I thought it would be a surprise one day, a happy one." He looked up at me,
his eyes glistening. I am so sorry, Leo. I am so sorry she used you like that. I believed her. I thought I had failed you. You never could, Dad. I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. We didn't take the compted one. We walked out into the cool Culver City night, the door to Wholesome swinging shut behind us, closing on one chapter and opening on a much more complicated one. The drive home was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. The suffocating tension was gone, replaced by a heavy shared sorrow and a shared strength. He didn't go home that night. He came to my apartment. He sat on my balcony, in the second chair, and we talked for hours. We talked about his business, which was doing just fine. We talked about my mom, about her ambitions, her frustrations, the woman she had become, a person who seemed to value the appearance of things more than the things themselves. There was anger, yes, but mostly there was a deep abiding sadness for her. She had chosen a gilded cage of her own making and had tried to lock us in it with her. The confrontation with my mother was anticlimactic. There was no screaming match, no dramatic reveal. My dad simply went home the next day and said, I had a wonderful dinner with Leo at my restaurant last night. He told me the color drained from her face. She knew the game was up. She tried to spin it, to explain, but the foundation of her story had collapsed. He just listened, and when she was done, he said, I think you should go stay with your sister for a while, Evelyn. She left, not forever, but for a while. They're in counseling now. It's a long, hard road. Some cracks never truly heal. You just learn to build around them. But something else healed. Me and my dad. We have a new ritual now. Every Sunday we have lunch at Wholesome. He introduces me to the staff as his son, the architect. They all know me now. We sit at the same corner table, and he tells me about the specials, the new suppliers, the problems with the walk-in freezer. He asks my opinion on things. It's his place, but he's making it ours. He's proud of it, openly, unabashedly proud. He doesn't hide it anymore. The secret is out, and in its place is something more solid, ownership, not just of a building and a business, but of his own story. I learned a lot from that whole mess. I learned that the most dramatic stories aren't the ones with explosions and car chase. They're the quiet ones, that happen under red checkered tablecloth, in the space between a lie and the truth. They're about the families we're born into and the families we choose to build, plank by careful plank. I'm still building mine, with Chloe, with my dad, and maybe, one day on his own terms, even with my mom, but it will be built on truth, and it will, I hope, be authentically, messily, and beautifully ours.